3 words on Instagram changed everything I thought I knew about my life. Finally got him, posted by my best friend Megan, alongside a photo that made my blood run cold. But what the security cameras captured that night revealed a truth so twisted, I'm still trying to process it all. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Lauren, and until 2 weeks ago, I thought I had the perfect life mapped out. I'm 24, working as a marketing coordinator in downtown Phoenix, and I'd been dating Connor Mitchell for 8 months. Connor was everything I thought I wanted. Tall, charming, worked in finance, and had this way as making me feel like I was the only person in the room when he looked at me. Megan Torres had been my best friend since college. We met during freshman orientation at Arizona State, bonded over our shared love of true crime podcasts and terrible reality TV. She was the type of friend who would drive across town at midnight just to bring you ice cream after a breakup. The one who remembered every important date in your life, the one who hyped you up when you needed confidence. Or, at least, that's who I thought she was. The three of us hung out constantly. Megan was single and always joked about being the third wheel, but Connor and I never minded. She fits seamlessly into our dynamic. Friday nights were usually spent at my apartment in Tempe, ordering takeout and binge-watching Netflix. Weekends meant hiking in South Mountain or checking out new restaurants in Scottsdale. Megan had a key to my place, knew Connor's coffee order by heart, and was always the first person I texted when something exciting happened. Looking back now, there were signs I completely missed. Little things that my brain explained away because I trusted her implicitly. Like how Megan always seemed to know Connor's schedule better than I did. She'd mention he had a big presentation on Tuesday when I hadn't even told her about it. Or how she'd suggest we go to specific restaurants where Connor's coworkers happened to be dining. She'd always laugh it off, saying she was just lucky with her guesses. Then there were the photos. Megan was always taking pictures of our group hangouts, but I started noticing she took way more shots when Connor was around. She'd insist on getting the perfect angle and would take dozens of photos just to get one good one. I thought she was just being a good friend, documenting our memories. The night everything fell apart was supposed to be a celebration. Connor had just gotten promoted to senior analyst at his firm, and we'd planned a dinner at this upscale steakhouse in Paradise Valley. Megan was supposed to join us, but she canceled at the last minute, claiming she had a family emergency back in Tucson. She seemed genuinely upset on the phone, so I didn't think twice about it. Connor picked me up at 7 in his black BMW, looking incredible in a navy suit I'd helped him pick out the week before. We had an amazing dinner, champagne, perfectly cooked steaks, and Connor was more attentive than usual. He kept reaching across the table to hold my hand, telling me how grateful he was to have me in his life during this big career milestone. Everything felt perfect. After dinner, we went back to Connor's apartment in Central Phoenix. His place was this modern loft with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. We opened another bottle of wine and settled onto his couch, talking about his new role and making plans for a weekend trip to Sedona to celebrate. Connor seemed relaxed and happy, and I remember thinking how lucky I was. Around 11, Connor's phone started buzzing with work emails about his transition to the new position. He apologized and said he needed to respond to a few urgent messages. I told him to take his time and decided to scroll through Instagram while he worked. That's when I saw it. Megan's post was timestamped just 20 minutes earlier. The photo showed Connor and a woman at what looked like an intimate dinner. The woman's face wasn't clearly visible, just long dark hair and a black dress. But Connor was unmistakable. He was wearing the exact same navy suit, holding hands with this mystery woman across a restaurant table. But here's the thing that made my stomach drop. The restaurant in the photo wasn't where Connor and I had dinner. The interior was completely different. Exposed brick walls, dim lighting, vintage decor. Nothing like the modern steakhouse where we'd spent our evening. The caption read, "Finally got him. Some things are worth the wait. Hashtag blessed. Hashtag love wins. Hashtag my man." My hands were shaking as I stared at the screen. The photo had already gotten dozens of likes and comments from mutual friends, people congratulating Megan on her new relationship and saying how happy they were for her. Comments like, "I knew you two would end up together," and "About time, you guys are perfect for each other." I looked up at Connor, who was still focused on his laptop, typing away at his emails. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The timestamp on Megan's post was from tonight, during the exact time Connor and I were having dinner. But the photo clearly showed Connor at a different restaurant with someone else. I checked Megan's Instagram stories and found more photos from the same evening. Images of wine glasses clinking, a dessert with two forks, hands intertwined across a table. The man's watch in one of the photos was identical to the one I'd given Connor for his birthday 3 months ago. My heart was pounding as I tried to process what this meant. Either Connor had somehow been at two places at once, or someone was playing a very elaborate game. But the photos were too detailed, too specific to be old images repurposed for some kind of sick joke. I excused myself to the bathroom, needing space to think. In the mirror, I looked pale and shaken. I tried calling Megan, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I sent her a text asking what was going on, but the message showed as delivered but not read. When I came back to the living room, Connor had finished with his emails and was pouring himself another glass of wine. He looked up at me with a smile that suddenly seemed different, though I couldn't put my finger on why. "Everything okay?" he asked, patting the couch cushion next to him. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I sat down, my phone still clutched in my hand, and tried to keep my voice steady. "Connor, where did you say you had lunch today?" He looked confused by the random question. "Lunch? I just grabbed a sandwich at the deli near my office. Why?" "And you haven't seen Megan today?" "Megan? No, not since last weekend when we all went to that farmer's market together." "Lauren, what's going on? You're acting really strange." I showed him the Instagram post. Connor's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, shock, and then something that looked almost like panic before settling into concern. "What the hell is this?" he said, taking my phone to look closer at the image. "This isn't me. I mean, it looks like me, but I've been with you all evening. This doesn't make any sense." He handed my phone back and ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I recognized as his tell when he was stressed or thinking hard about something. "Could these be old photos?" he suggested. "Maybe from before we started dating? Though I don't remember ever going to dinner with Megan alone." That's when I noticed something else. In the background of one of Megan's Instagram stories, there was a distinctive neon sign, Bruno's Bistro, in cursive red lettering. I knew that place. It was a small Italian restaurant about 15 minutes from Connor's apartment, known for its romantic atmosphere and incredible tiramisu. "Connor," I said slowly, "I think we need to figure out what's really going on here." Connor suggested we drive to Bruno's Bistro to see if anyone there could provide answers. The 20-minute car ride was tense and quiet, both of us lost in our own thoughts. I kept refreshing Megan's Instagram, watching the likes and comments pile up on her mysterious post. Bruno's Bistro sat tucked between a vintage bookstore and a yoga studio on a quiet street in central Phoenix. The exterior matched the photos perfectly. Weathered brick facade with that distinctive red neon cursive sign glowing in the window. Through the large front windows, I could see the intimate dining room with its exposed brick walls and dim amber lighting. We parked across the street and sat in Connor's car for a moment, both staring at the restaurant entrance. A few couples were leaving, laughing and holding hands, completely unaware of the crisis unfolding in the BMW across the street. "This feels insane," Connor muttered, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel. "I've never even been to this place before." I pulled up Megan's Instagram again, studying the photos more carefully. In one image, I could make out part of a menu on the table, the distinctive burgundy leather binding that Bruno's was known for. Another photo showed a dessert plate with the restaurant's signature presentation of tiramisu, complete with the tiny Italian flag garnish they were famous for. "Connor," I said slowly, "I think we need to figure out what's really going on here." Connor suggested we drive to Bruno's Bistro to see if anyone there could provide answers. The 20-minute car ride was tense and quiet, both of us lost in our own thoughts. I kept refreshing Megan's Instagram, watching the likes and comments pile up on her mysterious post. Bruno's Bistro sat tucked between a vintage bookstore and a yoga studio on a quiet street in central Phoenix. The exterior matched the photos perfectly. Weathered brick facade with that distinctive red neon cursive sign glowing in the window. Through the large front windows, I could see the intimate dining room with its exposed brick walls and dim amber lighting. We parked across the street and sat in Connor's car for a moment, both staring at the restaurant entrance. A few couples were leaving, laughing and holding hands, completely unaware of the crisis unfolding in the BMW across the street. "This feels insane," Connor muttered, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel. "I've never even been to this place before." I pulled up Megan's Instagram again, studying the photos more carefully. In one image, I could make out part of a menu on the table, the distinctive burgundy leather binding that Bruno's was known for. Another photo showed a dessert plate with the restaurant's signature presentation of tiramisu, complete with the tiny Italian flag garnish they were famous for. "Connor, look at this," I said, zooming in on one of the photos. "See the wine bottle in the background? It's a 2019 Barolo. That's your favorite wine. You ordered it at least 3 times when we've been out together." His face paled as he leaned over to look at my screen. "Okay, that's really specific. But Lauren, I swear to you, I have no memory of being here tonight, or any other night." We decided to go inside and ask if the staff remembered serving Connor and a brunette woman earlier that evening. The hostess, a young woman with short blonde hair and multiple ear piercings, greeted us with a professional smile. "Hi, welcome to Bruno's. Table for 2? "Actually," I said, pulling up my phone, "we're trying to figure out if you might remember serving this couple tonight." I showed her one of Megan's clearer photos. The hostess squinted at the image, then looked up at Connor with recognition dawning on her face. "Oh yeah, absolutely. You guys left maybe an hour ago. The brunette lady was so sweet. She kept taking photos of everything. Said it was a special celebration." My stomach dropped. Connor looked like he'd been slapped. "Are you sure it was him?" Connor asked, his voice strained.
A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. "Definitely," she replied, looking confused by his reaction. "You ordered the sea bass and she got the chicken marsala. You shared the tiramisu. She paid with a black credit card and left a really generous tip. Is everything okay?" Connor and I exchanged glances. This was impossible. Connor had been with me from 7 o'clock until we saw the Instagram post at 11. There was no way he could have been in 2 places at once. "Can I ask what time they arrived?" I managed to say. "Around 8:30, maybe. They had a reservation under Torres, I think." Torres, Megan's last name. We thanked the hostess and left the restaurant in stunned silence. Back in the car, Connor was gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. "Lauren, I need you to believe me," he said, turning to face me. "I have never been in that restaurant before in my life. I don't know how this is possible, but I swear on my mother's grave I was with you all evening." I wanted to believe him. Everything in my heart said Connor was telling the truth, but the evidence was mounting in a way that defied logical explanation. "There has to be a rational explanation," I said, though my voice lacked conviction. "Maybe someone who looks like you? A doppelganger? Who happens to know my favorite wine and has the same watch you gave me for my birthday?" That's when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email. You need to see this. A friend who cares." I opened my email app with trembling fingers and found a message from a Gmail account I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Security footage from Bruno's Bistro, 8:47 p.m. tonight." The email contained a video file and a brief message. "I work at the security company that monitors the cameras for several restaurants downtown. I saw your boyfriend's Instagram drama blowing up and thought you should see this. The timestamp is legitimate." Connor leaned over as I hit play on the video attachment. The black and white security footage showed the interior of Bruno's Bistro from an elevated angle. The timestamp in the corner read 8:47 p.m., exactly when Connor and I had been finishing our appetizers at the steakhouse across town. On the screen, clear as day, was Connor walking into the restaurant holding hands with a woman whose long dark hair obscured her face from the camera angle. They were seated at a corner table, and the footage showed them behaving like an intimate couple, leaning across the table toward each other, sharing food, holding hands. "This is impossible," Connor whispered, staring at the screen. "That looks exactly like me, but I wasn't there." I fast-forwarded through the footage, watching this Connor look-alike wine and dine the mystery woman. At one point, around 9:15 p.m., according to the timestamp, the woman got up to use the restroom. As she walked past the camera, her face was clearly visible for just a moment. It was definitely Megan. But it was the next part of the footage that made me gasp out loud. When Megan returned from the restaurant, she pulled out her phone and started taking photos of their table, their food, their intertwined hands. I watched her snap photo after photo, changing angles and poses. It was like watching someone create content for social media in real time. Around 10:30 p.m., they shared the tiramisu, just like the hostess had described. The man in the video, who looked identical to Connor, fed Megan a bite of dessert, and she laughed, throwing her head back in delight. Then they got up to leave, walking out hand in hand. The video ended, leaving Connor and I sitting in stunned silence in the parking lot. "I don't understand what's happening," Connor said quietly. "That person looks exactly like me, but Lauren, I swear I have never cheated on you. I don't know how to explain this footage, but there has to be an explanation." My mind was reeling. Either my boyfriend was the most skilled liar I've ever encountered, or something much stranger was going on. The person in the video didn't just look like Connor. They had his mannerisms, his way of holding a wine glass, even the same habit of running his hand through his hair. I tried calling Megan again, but her phone was still going straight to voicemail. Her Instagram showed she was active. She'd added more stories from her dinner, including a boomerang video of champagne glasses clinking, but she wasn't responding to my increasingly frantic messages. We need to go to Megan's apartment, I decided, right now. She's the only one who can explain what's in that video. Connor nodded grimly and started the car. As we drove through the quiet Phoenix streets toward Megan's complex in Ahwatukee, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to uncover something that would change everything I thought I knew about my life. Megan lived in a gated community called Desert Springs, one of those newer developments with identical beige stucco buildings and perfectly manicured landscaping. Her apartment was on the second floor of Building C, and I'd been there countless times for movie nights and wine sessions. Tonight, the familiar walk up those stairs felt completely different. The lights were on in her apartment, and I could hear music playing softly inside. Connor stayed a few steps behind me as I knocked on the door, his presence both comforting and confusing given what we'd just witnessed. "Megan, it's me," I called out. "We need to talk." The music stopped abruptly, followed by the sound of footsteps and hushed whispers. My blood ran cold. There was definitely someone else in there with her. After what felt like an eternity, Megan opened the door, but only partially, keeping the security chain latched. She was wearing a black dress I'd never seen before. Her makeup was flawless despite the late hour, and there was something different about her demeanor. Gone was the casual, comfortable friend I knew. This version of Megan seemed polished and guarded. "Lauren, hey," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "It's really late. What are you doing here?" "Cut the act, Megan. I saw your Instagram post. We went to Bruno's Bistro. I have security footage of you there tonight with someone who looks exactly like Connor." I gestured toward him. "So either you want to explain what's going on, or I'm calling the police." Megan's carefully composed expression cracked for just a moment, and I caught a flash of panic in her eyes. Behind her, I heard the distinct sound of a door closing. Someone had just left through what I knew was her back patio door. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice wavered. "I've been home all night dealing with my family emergency, remember?" "Your family emergency in Tucson?" Connor spoke up for the first time.
Because the GPS on your Instagram photos shows you posted from Central Phoenix, specifically from Bruno's Bistro on Camelback Road. I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot of her own Instagram story, the one with the location tag clearly visible. Megan, just tell me the truth. Who were you with tonight, and why did you post that he was your boyfriend? She stood there for a long moment, and I could see her calculating her options. Finally, she unlatched the security chain and opened the door wider. "Fine," she said, stepping aside. "Come in, but this isn't what you think it is." Her apartment looked different than usual. The coffee table had been cleared of its normal clutter and set with 2 wine glasses and an empty bottle of the same Barolo I'd seen in her restaurant photos. There were rose petals scattered across her dining table, and several candles were still burning, filling the room with the scent of vanilla and sandalwood. "Romantic evening?" I asked, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. Megan walked over to her kitchen counter and leaned against it, crossing her arms defensively. "Lauren, you have to understand something. I never meant for you to find out this way." "Find out what?" "Connor and I have feelings for each other, that we've been seeing each other for the past 2 months." The words hit me like a physical blow. Connor stepped forward immediately. "That's not true," he said firmly. "Megan, I don't know what game you're playing, but I've never had feelings for you, and we've certainly never been seeing each other." Megan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Really, Connor, you're going to stand there and lie to her face after everything we've shared?" She walked over to a drawer and pulled out her phone. "Should I show her the text messages, the photos you sent me, the plans we made?" My world was tilting on its axis. I looked back and forth between them, trying to read the truth in their faces. Connor looked genuinely confused and horrified. Megan looked hurt and angry, like a woman scorned. "Show me," I said quietly. Megan opened her text messages and handed me the phone. The conversation thread was labeled Connor, Love, and filled with what appeared to be months of intimate exchanges. Messages like, "Can't wait to see you tonight," and "Lauren will never understand what we have," and "Soon we won't have to hide anymore." The messages were definitely coming from Connor's phone number. I recognized it immediately. Connor grabbed the phone from my hands and stared at the screen, his face growing paler by the second. "I didn't send these," he whispered. "Lauren, I swear to you I never sent any of these messages." "Then how do you explain them?" Megan demanded. "They're from your phone, Connor, your number, just like all the others." I scrolled through more of the conversation. There were photos, too, pictures that looked like Connor had taken them himself. Selfies in his car, photos from his gym, even one that appeared to be taken in his bedroom. But something was off about them. The angles were slightly wrong, the lighting seemed artificial, and Connor looked different somehow, though I couldn't put my finger on exactly how. "These photos," I said slowly, studying them more carefully. "Connor, when did you take this one?" I showed him a selfie that was supposedly sent 3 days ago. He looked at the image and frowned. "I've never taken a selfie like this. The background is all wrong. That's not my bedroom wall. And look at my hair. I got it cut short last week, but in this photo it's longer, like it was a month ago." That's when I noticed something else strange. In several of the photos, the Connor look-alike was wearing clothes I'd never seen before. A red polo shirt that wasn't Connor's style, a silver bracelet he'd never owned, even a pair of glasses that Connor didn't need. "Megan," I said, my detective instincts kicking in despite my emotional turmoil, "where did you meet this person you've been seeing?" "What do you mean, where did I meet him? I've known Connor for as long as you have. We met when you started dating." "No, I mean, where did you first start seeing him romantically? What was the first date?" She hesitated, which was unlike the Megan I knew. The real Megan was always ready with details, always eager to share every aspect of her romantic life. It started gradually," she said finally. "We began texting more, and then he asked me to meet him for coffee one afternoon while you were at work." "Which coffee shop?" "The Starbucks on Mill Avenue." Connor shook his head. "I hate Starbucks. The parking is terrible, and they always get my order wrong. I've complained about it multiple times in front of both of you." I was starting to piece together a terrifying possibility. "Megan, I need you to think carefully. When you've been seeing this person, have you ever been to his apartment? Have you been to his workplace? Have you met any of his friends or coworkers?" Well, no, but we were keeping things secret because of you. He said it was better to meet in neutral places until we figured out how to tell you. And you never found that suspicious? That in 2 months of allegedly dating Connor, you've never been to any of the places Connor actually goes? The confidence was slowly draining from Megan's face, replaced by something that looked like dawning realization mixed with fear. "What are you saying?" she whispered. I looked at Connor, then back at Megan, and took a deep breath before voicing the theory that was forming in my mind. I think someone has been impersonating Connor, and I think they've been manipulating both of us. The silence that followed my statement was deafening. Megan sank onto her couch, still clutching her phone, while Connor began pacing her living room like a caged animal. "That's impossible," Megan said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I would know if someone was pretending to be Connor. I've known him for 8 months." "Have you thought?" I sat down across from her. "Think about it, Megan. Every interaction you've had with this person has been away from Connor's normal life. Different restaurants, different locations, always when the real Connor was with me or at work." Connor stopped pacing and turned to face us. "We need to figure out who's behind this. Someone has been studying my life, my habits, even getting access to my phone number somehow." That's when it hit me. "Connor, show me your phone." He handed it over without hesitation. I scrolled through his text messages, looking for the thread with Megan. It was there, but it was completely different from what I'd seen on her phone. Connor's version showed only normal, friendly group chat messages and occasional logistics about hangout plans. None of the romantic messages that Megan had shown me existed in his phone. "This doesn't make sense," I muttered, comparing the two phones side by side. Same phone number, completely different conversation histories. Megan looked over at Connor's phone and her face went white. "Those aren't the messages I've been receiving. Where are all the other texts?" "What other texts?" Connor asked. "I've never sent you anything romantic, Megan. I've never even texted you privately outside of group messages with Lauren." I handed both phones back and pulled out my own, opening a new text message to Connor's number. I typed, "Test message from Lauren," and sent it. Connor's phone buzzed immediately with my message. Then I had him text me back. My phone received his reply instantly. "Okay, so Connor's phone number works normally," I said, "which means someone else has been using a different method to contact you, Megan." "But it showed Connor's name and number on my caller ID," she insisted. "Phone numbers can be spoofed," Connor said. "It's not that hard to make it look like calls and texts are coming from a different number." I was starting to feel like we were dealing with something much more sophisticated than a simple case of cheating. "Megan, I need you to walk me through the first time you heard from this fake Connor. What exactly happened?" She set her phone down and rubbed her temples. "It was about 2 months ago. I got a text late at night, like around midnight. It said something like, 'Hey, I know this is weird, but I can't stop thinking about our conversation earlier.' I thought he meant something from when we were all hanging out that day." "What did you text back?" I asked what conversation he meant, and he said he'd been thinking about how I'd mentioned feeling lonely lately, and that he understood because he sometimes felt the same way, even when he was in a relationship. Connor frowned. "But I never heard you say you were feeling lonely. When did you mention that?" "I didn't," Megan said slowly. "At least, not to either of you. I'd been talking to my therapist about it, and maybe I posted something vague on social media, but I never had that conversation with Connor." "So this person somehow knew personal information about your emotional state," I said. "Information they couldn't have gotten from Connor because Connor didn't know it." The pieces were starting to form a disturbing picture. Someone had been monitoring both of our lives closely enough to know intimate details about our thoughts and feelings. "Megan, have you noticed anyone following you lately? Any strange emails or friend requests from people you don't know?" "Actually, yes," she said, sitting up straighter. "About 3 months ago, I started getting friend requests on Facebook and Instagram from accounts with no profile pictures and barely any information. I ignored them, but they kept coming from different accounts." "Did you ever accept any of them?" "A few, yeah. They seemed harmless, just accounts that would like my photos and occasionally comment with generic stuff like 'beautiful' or 'love this.'
Connor and I exchanged glances. Someone had been building a network of fake social media accounts to monitor Megan's online activity. What about you, Connor? I asked. Any strange online activity? Now that you mention it, I've been getting weird emails lately. They look like they're from my gym, my bank, even my work, asking me to update my information or reset passwords. I usually just delete them. Phishing emails, I said. Someone's been trying to get access to your personal accounts. My phone buzzed with a notification. I glanced down and saw a new Instagram story from an account I didn't recognize, at Phoenix Nightlife 247. The story showed a video of Connor and Megan leaving Bruno's Bistro together, taken from across the street. The timestamp matched the security footage we'd seen earlier. Guys, I said, my voice shaking as I showed them my phone, someone's been documenting this whole thing. We watched the Instagram story together. The video was taken from the same vantage point where Connor and I had parked earlier. It showed the fake Connor and Megan walking hand in hand to a silver sedan I didn't recognize. The video followed them as they drove away, and the final frame showed a clear shot of the license plate. We need to trace that license plate, Connor said, and we need to figure out who's behind this at Phoenix Nightlife 247 account. I clicked on the account profile. It had been created just yesterday and had no other posts or followers. But the bio contained a single line that made my blood run cold. Some people deserve to know the truth about their relationships. This is targeted, I said. Someone specifically created this account to expose what they thought was Connor cheating on me. But it's not Connor, Megan said, finally seeming to fully grasp the situation. So who is it, and why would they go to all this trouble? Before anyone could answer, there was a sharp knock at Megan's front door. We all froze, staring at each other. "Are you expecting anyone?" I whispered. Megan shook her head. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. Connor moved toward the window and carefully peered through the blinds. "There's a man at the door," he said quietly. Tall, dark hair, wearing a black jacket. "Can you see his face?" I asked. "Not clearly, but..." Connor's voice trailed off, and his face went completely white. "Lauren, I think he looks like me." My heart started racing. The person behind all of this was here, at Megan's apartment, right now. The knocking stopped, and we heard the sound of footsteps walking around to the back of the building. Megan's apartment had a patio door that led to a small balcony overlooking the courtyard. "He's going around back," Connor said, moving away from the front window. That's when we heard it, the soft sound of someone trying the handle on the patio door, the door that I now realized someone had used to leave Megan's apartment when we first arrived. "Call 911, I told Megan, but as she reached for her phone, all the lights in her apartment suddenly went out, plunging us into complete darkness. In the pitch-black apartment, I could hear Megan's panicked breathing and the sound of Connor moving carefully toward what I assumed was the patio door. My eyes were slowly adjusting to the darkness, and I could make out shapes and shadows in the faint moonlight filtering through the blinds. "Stay calm," Connor whispered. "I'm going to try to see what's happening outside." "No," I hissed back. "Don't go near the door. We need to get out of here through the front." But before we could move, we heard the unmistakable sound of the patio door sliding open. Someone was inside the apartment with us. I fumbled for my phone and managed to activate the flashlight. The sudden beam of light revealed a figure standing near the patio entrance, and my heart nearly stopped. It was like looking at Connor's identical twin, but something was fundamentally wrong with the image. The man standing in Megan's living room looked exactly like Connor in terms of facial features, height, and build, but his movements were different, more calculated, more predatory. And his eyes, even in the harsh phone light, seemed cold in a way Connor's never were. "Hello, Lauren," the imposter said, his voice an eerily perfect match for Connor's. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out." Connor stepped protectively in front of me. "Who are you? What do you want?" The imposter smiled, and it was Connor's smile, but somehow wrong.
What do I want? I want what's mine, what should have been mine from the beginning. I don't understand, Megan said from somewhere behind us. You told me you were Connor. You said you loved me. I am Connor, the imposter replied. I'm the Connor that Lauren deserves. Connor who would appreciate what he has instead of taking it for granted. I kept my phone light trained on him, studying his face more carefully. Now that I could see him clearly, the differences became apparent. His nose was slightly different, the same shape, but maybe the result of surgical alteration. His hairline was identical, but the hair itself had a different texture. Even his voice, while matching Connor's tone and cadence, had subtle differences in inflection. You've been watching us, I said, for months, learning Connor's mannerisms, his preferences, his schedule. 3 years, the imposter corrected. I've been watching for 3 years, Lauren, ever since I first saw you at that coffee shop on Mill Avenue. You were reading a book about forensic psychology, drinking a vanilla latte, completely absorbed in your own world. You were perfect. A chill ran down my spine. 3 years ago, I had been single, living alone, working at a different job. This person had been stalking me long before I'd even met Connor. You're insane, Connor said, but the imposter just laughed. Am I? Or am I the only one who truly sees Lauren's worth? I watched you stumble through relationship after relationship, never appreciating the incredible woman right in front of you. And then Connor came along, and I thought surely this one would be different. But he's just like all the rest. I appreciate me, I said, though my voice came out smaller than I intended. Does he? The imposter reached into his jacket pocket, and I tensed, but he only pulled out a small digital tablet. Let me show you something, Lauren. He tapped the screen and turned it toward us. It showed what appeared to be security footage from various locations around Phoenix, restaurants, parking lots, even the lobby of Connor's apartment building. I've been documenting every moment of your relationship, he said. Every time Connor checks his phone while you're talking, every time he chooses work over spending time with you, every time he fails to notice when you're upset. The footage scrolled through scene after scene. Connor on his phone during dinner dates. Connor cancels plans for work commitments. Connor seemed oblivious when I was having a bad day. When taken out of context and edited together, it painted a picture of a neglectful, inattentive boyfriend. This is manipulated, Connor said angrily. These clips don't show the full context of any of those situations. But they show the truth, the imposter insisted. Lauren deserves someone who puts her first, someone who notices every detail about her, someone who would move heaven and earth to make her happy. Someone like you? I asked, though I already knew the answer.
I know everything about you, Lauren. Your favorite book is In the Woods by Tana French. You prefer vanilla candles, but only light them when you're stressed. You always order the same thing at Thai restaurants, but pretend to consider other options. You have a scar on your left ankle from when you fell off your bike at age 7. The level of detail was terrifying. These weren't things someone could learn from casual observation or social media stalking. This required intimate, long-term surveillance. How? I whispered. I made myself into the perfect man for you, he said proudly. I studied your preferences, your habits, your dreams. I got plastic surgery to look like the type of man you're attracted to. I learned to replicate Connor's appearance because I saw how happy you were with him initially. You're sick, Megan said, her voice shaking. You manipulated me. You made me think I was in love with Connor. You were practicing, the imposter said dismissively. I needed to test my Connor persona before approaching Lauren directly. You were so eager to believe that someone like Connor could want you that you never questioned the inconsistencies. The cruelty in his voice when he spoke to Megan was shocking. This wasn't someone capable of genuine love. This was someone obsessed with possession and control. What's your real name? Connor demanded. Names don't matter. I became who I needed to become for Lauren. I was trying to think of a way out of this situation when I noticed something. The imposter kept shifting his weight from foot to foot, and there was something off about his posture. That's when I realized he was favoring his left leg. "You're hurt," I said. "What happened to your leg?" For the first time, his confident demeanor faltered slightly. "It's nothing." But I remembered something from the security footage at Bruno's Bistro. When the fake Connor had stood up from the table, there had been a slight hitch in his movement that I'd attributed to the video quality. "You've been injured this whole time," I continued. "That's why you couldn't maintain the charade for long periods. That's why you could only meet Megan for short dinners and quick encounters." "Shut up," he said, and for the first time, his voice didn't sound like Connor's at all. That's when Connor made his move. He lunged forward, tackling the imposter around the waist. They went down hard, crashing into Megan's coffee table and sending the empty wine glasses flying. "Run!" Connor shouted to us as he grappled with his doppelganger on the floor. But as Megan and I rushed toward the front door, I heard a sound that made my blood freeze, the distinctive click of a gun being cocked. "Nobody moves," the imposter said, his voice now cold and completely different from Connor's warm tone. "Or your precious Connor dies right here." The metallic glint of the gun in the moonlight made everything suddenly terrifyingly real. Connor and the imposter were still on the floor, but now the weapon was pressed against Connor's temple. Both men were breathing heavily from their struggle, and I could see a dark stain spreading across the imposter's shirt. Connor had managed to reopen whatever injury was causing him to favor his left leg. "Let him go," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the chaos of my thoughts. "It's me you want, right? Connor has nothing to do with this." The imposter's laugh was bitter and nothing like Connor's warm chuckle. "Connor has everything to do with this. He's the obstacle that's been keeping us apart." "There is no us," I said firmly. "There never was and never will be. What you've done isn't love, it's obsession." "You don't understand yet," he replied, using his free hand to wipe blood from a cut on his cheek. "But you will. Once Connor is out of the picture, you'll see that I'm the one who truly knows you." Megan was pressed against the wall near the front door, her face pale in the phone light I was still holding. I could see her slowly reaching for the door handle behind her back. "How did you even find Connor in the first place?" I asked, trying to keep the imposter talking while Megan worked on our escape route. "Social media made it easy," he said. "You posted about your first date with him. Then I found his LinkedIn, his Instagram, his gym membership records. Amazing how much personal information people leave scattered around the internet." "And the surgery?" Connor asked through gritted teeth. "Took almost a year of procedures. I found a plastic surgeon in Mexico who didn't ask too many questions about why I wanted to look like someone else. It cost me nearly $50,000, but Lauren was worth every penny." The casual way he talked about mutilating his face to become someone else sent chills through me. This level of obsession went far beyond anything I'd encountered in my forensic psychology studies. "What about your real life?" I pressed. "Your job, your family? People must have noticed you were gone for surgeries, noticed you were acting differently."
"I don't have a real life," he said simply. "I quit my job 2 years ago when I inherited money from my grandmother. No family left, no close friends. My entire existence became about preparing for our life together." The complete absence of any other connections in his life was perhaps the most chilling revelation yet. This wasn't someone who had gradually become obsessed. This was someone whose entire identity had been consumed by his fixation on me. Behind the imposter, I saw Megan slowly turn the front door handle. The soft click seemed impossibly loud in the tense silence. "You made a mistake tonight," I said, hoping to mask any sound from the door. "Posting on Instagram, letting us see the security footage. Why reveal yourself now?" "Because I'm tired of waiting," he snapped. "I've been patient for 3 years, Lauren. I've watched you date mediocre men who don't deserve you. I've waited for you to realize on your own that you need someone better, but you're too blind to see what's right in front of you. So you decided to force the issue by making me think Connor was cheating? I wanted you to see him for what he really is, someone who would betray you with your best friend, someone you couldn't trust. But it backfired, Connor said, and I could hear the pain in his voice from the gun's pressure against his head, because Lauren trusted me enough to investigate instead of just believing what she saw. The imposter's grip tightened on the weapon. It doesn't matter. You're still going to lose her. That's when Megan made her move. She yanked the front door open and shouted into the hallway, "Help! Someone call 911! There's a man with a gun!" Her voice echoed through the apartment complex, and within seconds, I could hear doors opening and concerned voices in the corridor. The imposter's head snapped toward the sound, and in that moment of distraction, Connor drove his elbow back into the man's injured ribs. The imposter cried out in pain, and his grip on the gun loosened just enough for Connor to roll away. "Lauren, get out!" Connor yelled, scrambling to his feet. But instead of running, I lunged forward and grabbed the tablet the imposter had dropped during their earlier struggle. If this device contained evidence of 3 years of stalking, it could be crucial for building a case against him. The imposter was clutching his side, blood seeping between his fingers, but his eyes were locked on me with terrifying intensity. "You can't escape me, Lauren. I know where you live, where you work, where you shop. I know your entire routine." "Not anymore," I said, backing toward the door where Megan was frantically waving at neighbors and someone who looked like building security. "Because now I know you exist, and I'll be watching for you." "This isn't over," he said, using the wall to pull himself upright. "I've invested too much in us to give up now." "It was never an us," I replied. "It was always just you, alone, living in a fantasy." The sound of sirens was growing closer, and the imposter seemed to realize his situation was deteriorating rapidly. He looked toward the patio door, calculating his escape route. "Don't even think about it," Connor said, positioning himself between the imposter and the exit. But the imposter smiled, and it was perhaps the most disturbing expression I'd ever seen. Connor's face twisted into something malevolent and unrecognizable. "The police can't protect her forever," he said, "and I'm very, very patient." He moved toward the patio door, limping heavily, but moving with surprising speed. Connor started to follow, but I grabbed his arm. "Let him go," I said. "We have his tablet, his DNA from the blood, witnesses. Running after him in the dark will just put you in more danger." The imposter paused at the patio threshold and looked back at me one last time. "I'll be seeing you, Lauren, sooner than you think." Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness of the courtyard. Within minutes, Megan's apartment was filled with police officers, paramedics checking Connor's head where the gun had been pressed, and crime scene technicians beginning to process the evidence. I handed over the imposter's tablet and gave my statement to Detective Sarah Rodriguez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in stalking cases. "This level of planning and identity theft is highly unusual," Detective Rodriguez told me as we sat in Megan's kitchen. "Most stalkers don't have the resources or commitment to undergo plastic surgery. This suggests someone with significant financial means and an extremely dangerous level of obsession." "What happens now?" I asked. "We'll process the tablet, trace the accounts he used to contact your friend, and analyze the surveillance footage he collected. We'll also coordinate with hospitals and plastic surgery clinics to try to identify him. In the meantime, you'll need to take serious precautions." As the police finished their work and began to leave, I realized that while we'd uncovered the truth about the imposter, our ordeal was far from over. Somewhere in Phoenix, a man who had spent 3 years reshaping his entire existence around his obsession with me was still free. And he'd made it clear he wasn't giving up. The next 2 weeks felt like living in a thriller movie I couldn't escape from. Detective Rodriguez had arranged for increased police patrols around my apartment complex and workplace, but the constant awareness that someone was potentially watching my every move was exhausting. Connor barely left my side, working remotely when possible and insisting on accompanying me to run even the most basic errands. The analysis of the imposter's tablet revealed the true scope of his obsession. The device contained thousands of photos of me taken over 3 years, at coffee shops, grocery stores, walking to my car, even through the windows of my apartment. He'd documented my daily routines with military precision, noting everything from what time I typically left for work to which checkout line I preferred at Target. More disturbing were the detailed psychological profiles he'd created. The tablet contained extensive notes about my personality, my fears, my dreams, and my relationship patterns. He'd somehow accessed my social media accounts, my email, and even my therapy records from 2 years ago when I'd briefly seen a counselor after a difficult breakup. This guy is a professional-level stalker, Detective Rodriguez explained during one of our regular check-ins. The sophistication of his surveillance operation suggests either law enforcement or military training. We're running his methods through federal databases to see if we can identify him. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning when I was getting ready for work. Detective Rodriguez called just as I was finishing my coffee. "We got him," she said without preamble. "His real name is Marcus Webb, age 31, former Army intelligence specialist, discharged 3 years ago for psychological evaluation issues. We tracked him through the surgical records in Mexico." I sank onto my couch, relief flooding through me. Where is he? That's the complicated part. He's been arrested, but not for stalking you. Webb was picked up yesterday in Flagstaff on charges related to identity theft and credit card fraud. Apparently, he's been financing his obsession by stealing identities and draining bank accounts. So he's in custody? For now, but Lauren, there's something else. When they searched his apartment, they found detailed plans for what he called the final phase. Maps of your building, your work schedule, and supplies that suggest he was planning to abduct you. The words hit me like a physical blow. All this time, I'd thought his obsession was limited to watching and manipulating, but he'd been preparing to escalate to kidnapping. We also found journals, Detective Rodriguez continued. Webb had convinced himself that once he removed Connor from the picture and isolated you from your support system, you'd eventually develop feelings for him. Classic predator psychology. He believed he could manufacture a relationship through control and dependency. That afternoon, Connor and I met with Detective Rodriguez at the police station to go over the evidence they'd collected. The conference room table was covered with printouts of Webb's surveillance photos, copies of his journals, and crime scene photos from his apartment. Webb's apartment was a shrine to his obsession with me. The walls were covered with hundreds of my photos arranged in chronological order. He'd created a detailed timeline of my life going back to college, including information about my family, my friends, and every man I'd ever dated. He'd researched all your ex-boyfriends, Detective Rodriguez explained, pointing to a section of the wall covered with photos and personal information about men I dated over the years. Several of them reported receiving threatening anonymous messages around the time their relationships with you ended. He's been sabotaging my relationships for years, I realized with growing horror. It appears so. We found evidence that he'd created fake social media accounts to send inflammatory messages, made anonymous calls to your boyfriend's employers with false accusations, and even vandalized one ex-boyfriend's car.
Connor squeezed my hand under the table. That explains why some of your past relationships ended so suddenly. The guys probably thought you were behind the harassment. The most chilling discovery was Webb's detailed plan for what he called our new life together. He'd rented a cabin in rural Montana under a false identity and had stockpiled supplies for what appeared to be an extended isolation period. Maps, food supplies, restraints, and medical equipment suggested he'd planned to keep me there indefinitely. The psychological evaluation from his military discharge indicates severe delusional thinking and obsessive-compulsive behaviors, Detective Rodriguez said. He was discharged after a female colleague filed harassment complaints, but the military handled it internally, and he was released without criminal charges.
3 days later, I received a call that Webb had been formally charged with stalking, identity theft, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and multiple federal crimes related to his surveillance activities. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and his court-appointed attorney was already discussing a plea agreement. But perhaps the most important call came from Dr. Catherine Mills, a forensic psychologist who'd been brought in to evaluate Webb's mental state. Mr. Webb's obsession with you was what we call erotomania, Dr. Mills explained. He genuinely believed that you were in love with him, but unable to express it due to external circumstances. In his mind, every interaction you'd ever had, even being in the same coffee shop, was confirmation of this imaginary relationship. Will he get treatment? He'll be sentenced to significant prison time, and psychological treatment will be mandatory. However, I want to be honest with you. Individuals with this level of obsessive thinking rarely experience complete recovery. He'll likely always pose some degree of risk. The trial took place 6 months later. I testified about the impact Webb stalking had on my life, describing the fear, the violation of privacy, and the way his actions had nearly destroyed my relationship with Connor and my friendship with Megan. Webb sat quietly during most of the proceedings, occasionally taking notes, but never looking directly at me. When he was finally sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, he stood to address the court. "Your Honor," he said in a voice that was calm and eerily rational, "I want Lauren to know that I never intended to hurt her. Everything I did was out of love. I hope someday she'll understand that." The judge's response was swift and firm. "Mr. Webb, what you call love, the law calls stalking, harassment, and criminal threatening. True love respects boundaries and requires consent. You'll have many years in prison to consider the difference." As we left the courthouse that day, I felt a complex mixture of relief and lingering unease. Webb was behind bars, but his final words suggested he still didn't understand the criminality of his actions. Connor and I are still together, stronger now, after surviving something that could have destroyed us. We've moved to a new apartment in a different part of the city, and I've changed jobs to work for a company with better security protocols. Megan and I rebuilt our friendship, though it took time to work through the trauma of how Webb had manipulated her. She's in therapy now, dealing with the guilt and confusion of believing she'd been in a relationship with someone who never actually existed. I still think about Webb sometimes, especially late at night when I'm locking the doors and checking the windows. I wonder if he's still obsessing over me in his prison cell, still convinced that his feelings justified his actions. But I've learned something important through this experience. The difference between love and obsession isn't just academic. It's the difference between freedom and imprisonment, between respect and violation, between building someone up and tearing their world apart. 3 words on Instagram, "finally got him," revealed a truth I never could have imagined. But sometimes the most dangerous secrets are hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to expose the people we think we know. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.